Welcome to Founders Unplugged, hosted by Greg McCallum. Long-form, honest conversations with founders and entrepreneurs from around the world. This is part 2 of this episode. Be sure to check out part 1 if you haven't already. Link in the description.
So then, we're back for part 2. I'm here with Shona. If you haven't checked out part 1, first do that, because then you know who Shona is and you have some context. But you don't need to. You can also just carry on with this one. So yeah, we're back. We were getting quite carried away there with something, or I was getting carried away, I should say, as always on this show. With some ideas. But I do want to go into your time at Headspace then, specifically when the transition started to occur from the events company into a tech company. You touched on it a little bit, but I'm really curious because did that come as something as a shock to you in any point or to anyone, that sort of realization? And do you remember kind of when that sort of realization occurred that actually we're going to be pivoting to this? Like, can you speak on that?
It was it was Rich and Andy that came up with the idea, and
Right.
I remember they had been to New York. They did an event in New York, and they came back from the event, and this was the time when sort of Netflix and YouTube, that those platforms started to bubble, and this idea of accessing content that was broader than music and films, started to be available. Like there was like how-tos on YouTube, or here, let me guide you how to do X, Y, and Z. So there was this sort of cultural sort of user experience movement growing.
Sort of like video tutorial culture was becoming a thing.
Exactly, like courses online.
Right.
Like it wasn't, if this is a real long time ago now, but there wasn't many apps beyond some of the functional ones. I mean, I'm trying to think back what I had on my phone at the time, but it was very little. I was not an avid app user at that time. It was probably Google Maps and what have you. I had a smartphone.
So like default apps mostly.
Yeah, so, I mean, just such a profoundly amazing idea, as I say. Like, I think the whole concept of Headspace was incredible, that Rich and Andy, the demystifying meditation, I think, was the first profoundly impactful idea that they brought to life. And then the second one was then taking the content and applying that in an app. And in this case, I think the app was important because you could take it with you anywhere. And the whole point was that you had meditation in your pocket. And so you could sit on the tube on the way to work and meditate. And so it was that we didn't really have any tech experience. We didn't have a lot of money at the time. We therefore built the app on the back of an existing CMS that was not designed to really deliver meditations on a daily basis. It was really, really pulled together with, cardboard and sticky back plastic ultimately. I mean, but the agency that did the first job for us, I mean, amazing, that they were able to kind of manipulate this existing technology into something that would deliver what was required for the app. And Whip, the app agency that we worked with as well, were amazing.
Was the goal always, but just what I think of it, was the goal always to make it kind of like this broadly available app, etc.? Or was it really just as more of an accompanying material for those attending the events? Was that the first port of call?
Yeah, no, it's a good point, because actually the first app that was created was to give people Take 10 after the event. So yeah, I sort of skipped a step. There was an app that was created to simply give Take 10.
Okay.
Which was 10 minutes of meditation for 10 days.
So and additional value essentially for attendees.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And also to help them continue the practice. So they would obviously come and be inspired, but then it's what would help you when you get home? So it was take 10, take 15, take 20. 10 minutes for 10 days, 15 minutes for 15 days, 20 minutes for 20 days. But there was so, and again, I suppose this is about listening to your users. Firstly, not everyone could come to the event. So there would be people in Scotland and the events were in London. I'd love to come. I've heard about it from so-and-so. I can't make it. And so you're hearing that more and more. And so you're thinking, well, how can we provide this further and wider? Obviously, there was this idea of developing a piece of content on an app anyway. And then it's well, actually, why don't we just make this broader? So the first sort of, again, I don't know if people remember this, but the first Headspace journey that was created was a 365-day course that you had to go through sequentially. So you actually had to go through every single day. You couldn't leap ahead.
Right.
So there was all sorts of the whole thing never stopped really, because it was always this constant learning and iterating. And in a way, as soon as you baked something and you published it, you immediately worked out that, actually we could have, should have done. So you immediately kind of go back into that process, and that never stopped. I don't think there was a point where it was ever job done. It's an evolving,
and nor should it ever
process.
be. I mean, it's a living, breathing thing. If people are using it, it's living and breathing, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
No, that's super interesting. So what was your first reaction to hearing that was the direction that it was going to go in? Did it? I mean, by the way you've described it, because it was very much like a sort of a productization of something initially in quite a small part, by the sounds of it. For the thing, I'd imagine that it was probably okay, that makes sense, right? Because you're not seeing what eventually it becomes. It's not like, hey, we're going to build this multi-billion-pound app. It's very much the next step. So I imagine it wasn't too mind-blowing, but
well, it was just exciting. This is a long time ago as well. But it was just exciting. I just remember every single day.
Was it? What year was this? No?
2012. It was
a couple of years.
2012. Yeah, well, actually, sort of 2011. Really, the sort of technology piece began. Because it was the addition to the event. And then 2012, we really got stuck into it in earnest. And I suppose when I mean in earnest, it was like, right, this will be a fundamental part of how people experience Headspace. The audience will now not come to the event. The audience will come here. And what I mean by that is the launch of the app publicly. We did a partnership with The Guardian on New Year's Day. So it was like new year, new you. It was exciting, like we were sort of, again, like the guys are just excellent. Like this partnership was hustled with The Guardian to go live on New Year's Day. We were like squirreling away, like trying to get this product app system, if you think about it, because it's not just an app, it's in a whole back operations system, which we're like, we've never done this before. Like everyone's sort of working it out. I remember it was, doing all this through Christmas. And I remember the day before it went live, and it had to go live because the Guardian were publishing, like they were publishing in every single magazine, a CD of Andy's kind of guided meditations and this really gorgeous little booklet. And I was like, we haven't filled in any FAQs. So like the FAQs are just blank. And I was like, everybody just stick something in there, like shove an FAQ in.
It was amazing.
And it, but it was just exciting because, that day, obviously The Guardian went live and we're all like, you're like waiting. And then you can see your back end, like our little system. And it's like, oh my God, somebody just bought a subscription. Whoa. Like, and you could just start to actually see it in real time growing. And then, so it was just exciting. I don't think there was a down point.
Yeah. Was that the moment, or was there ever a moment where you, plural and singular, kind of were like, oh shit, this is going to be big? Like, did that ever happen?
I mean, I'm not sure I can speak for everyone else, because I'm sure there were different moments for everybody. But I think that experience I've spoken about, the day it went live with the Guardian partnership, and I was watching people buying and accessing subscriptions, and it was happening. I could see it happening.
It was in real time.
It was real time, and it wasn't just one. It was like one. Oh God, another one. Like I'd refresh. I'd go away, have a cup of tea, come back, refresh. Oh God, another 4. Like refresh again. Oh God, another 5. So at that point, I think for me, it was realizing this is going to happen. Like this has to be like, okay, right, we've got to wrap our arms around this. Like, because this is now happening. So that was definitely a moment. We did a partnership with Virgin Atlantic, which again was just a brilliant, genius move from, Rich and Andy's perspective, like thinking that creatively about how and where can we put meditation. And I think when that partnership came to fruition, and then Headspace was on the, media systems of all Virgin Atlantic flights, that was pretty cool. Like I remember going on a flight and being like, and then, there was just these moments, I think, where you could just see, do you know what it was? I think there was an acceptance of it. Like if I think about the Virgin Atlantic, it's like, this is meditation. This is quite like, back then, this is quite an unusual thing to talk about with people. And then all of a sudden Virgin Atlantic is putting it on their planes. You're like, okay.
Right.
Like, and I think as well, what I could sense was that there was a uniqueness to this that was just really resonating with people, and the practice itself was just absolutely shifting, was positively impacting people time and time and time again. And so you knew that would be the case for however many people you brought to the table. So then it was about, how do we bring everyone to the table?
Well, and then I suppose there's an inherent virality to a product that has that significant influence on people, right? In the positive way. I mean, I heard about Headspace initially from other people. It wasn't through advertising.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I heard about it.
Yeah.
And I think if you ask most people, where did you first hear about Headspace? If you're as a Headspace user, where did you first hear about it? Probably it's because someone recommended it to me. It's got that sort of that viral, that network effect built right into it. Which I think for a D2C brand is incredibly important anyway.
Yeah,
from a customer acquisition cost perspective, if nothing else.
We did not pay for advertising for the first couple of years. We didn't. It was press and it was partnerships and it was word of mouth. We did encourage you. We were very conscious about creating a language that you could use to talk about that with people. And we did have the buddy system. There were some features that we built in with a view of getting you to tell your 5 closest friends about you. So there was a buddy feature, which was quite rudimentary when I think back to it. But the idea was that you could connect with 5 of your closest friends. And so it's interesting now. I mean, now, as I say, getting attention, and it's an entirely different landscape with social media and the way that everything has shifted. But back then, social media was not like it was now. So it was press, it was word of mouth, it was partnerships, it was get listed in the top 10 best apps for health and fitness. It was all of those things that we were driving at. And we had PR. We had like a PR company that we worked with way before we did any paid marketing.
And during this time then, your role was COO, is that right?
Yeah. So I was MD. It was the brief that Rich gave me was, can you make this happen? Can you just make this happen? And so I was, like heads down, building a yellow brick road. Like as we were going, it was like, dum, 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 dum. And then that brick road went to America. So then I'm like building over the seas. So it was, it was quite the experience.
What was it like you moved to America, right? You said,
yeah.
Yeah. What was that like? I mean, had you spent much time in America up to that point prior to moving there?
No, I'd been on a couple of holidays.
Oh, right.
I'd been a couple of family holidays. So we're talking Florida and, New York. I've been to a few places, but no, never been to LA. I went a couple of times before I actually moved, but no, hadn't been. I was so heads down with this vision and mission to improve the health and happiness of the world that the move to LA was just part of that journey, if that makes sense. And I didn't
kind of
have
just took it in your stride, really.
Yeah, and I think it was I think the whole time that I was, again, I think that's a really interesting piece about Headspace in particular is, a lot of the early team had been profoundly moved and changed by the practice of meditation. And so the compassion to want everyone in the world to have that was quite overwhelming. And I think that's what drove a lot of those early, the energy and the drive. And this is why it's interesting when I work with other startups, I'm obsessively asking them about their vision and their mission. I'm like, make it big, make it powerful, make it profound, because that is ultimately what will inspire your team to get up in the morning and throw in for this. And so, it sort of came from that level of energy than, this is my job and should my job, I was like, I'll come to LA.
I mean, that's easier said than done though, right? I mean, like not every product is that inspiring.
Yeah.
I've worked for a lot of companies in sales and marketing functions and leadership positions. And like, if I really boil down their mission and vision statements, it's like, we're not changing the world, guys. Like we're selling B2B, like software to help people do this or that. Like, you know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
We can help people save a bit of time, maybe save a bit of money, but like, that's basically it. And anything else would be window dressing and clearly BS. Like, like you can't build it up that big, but like for Headspace, I mean, you can feel that. You can feel good about it because the literal idea of the product is to make people feel good, is to benefit them. So, but I don't think you can force it on everything, unfortunately.
You can't, but I think that you can still rally people around something joyful or something impactful. And I think that the
by the way you articulate it, you mean?
I think so, yeah. Right. Just, I think any journey that any startup goes on is an exciting journey, and you can rally people around the exciting journey. But I think the point of rallying people around is super key.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, yeah, it's quite easy to rally people around improving the health and happiness of the world. But there was also rallying people around a product launch or a feature launch or a shift in the company's organizational structure, which would benefit blah, blah, blah on a day-to-day basis. So there's a lot of internal PR that I think goes on in companies.
No, 100%. No, I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. I talk about that a lot as well with my clients, right? About the idea that, because my big focus is obviously on founder-led sales primarily, or sales in general, right? Working with sales teams of all various shapes and sizes, some big, some small. And one of the key lessons that I try and deliver on founder-led sales for very early stage founders or entrepreneurs is that it's not just learning the fundamental skills of selling to a customer. It's to learn those skills to sell to an investor, to sell to early founding members of the team, et cetera, et cetera. And selling is what you're describing to me. Like when you describe that, I just hear sales. Because and this is a thing that people who haven't been in sales don't understand. They see it as the art of persuasion or the art of manipulation. People who are in sales know better than that. It's not that. It is the art of communication, communicating sometimes some very big ideas in a way that makes them easily digestible. To actually, in some ways, but to kind of tie it all up in a nice bow, to actually save other people of the anxiety that you have, the burden that you have in thinking of all of it, right? And trying to do, you're saving people of that burden, and you're just giving them the piece of it that's going to be most useful and most motivating without all of the messy chaos behind it. So I wholeheartedly agree with you on that. There is, but
that makes a lot of
I don't know.
sense.
But then I suppose to play devil's advocate on that and to sort of, straw man my own position, I guess. Then you think of things like, drug companies that have been prosecuted for, getting a whole bunch of people addicted to opioids and stuff like that. You see the insights, or that gets some behind the scenes of like their big quarterly meetings where they're getting everyone pumped up and they're making them believe in the vision. Like, it can also go the other way too. You can make people very pumped up about selling absolute garbage to people.
Well, I mean, I think that comes down to our human values, I suppose. And, that is definitely something that we all have to bear our own human values, I guess. But to your point, it's very difficult. And I think that, God, like talking quite existentially now, what a joy to be able to work on something that you feel profoundly passionate about. And I think that, the truth is we do exist in a very big system. And to your point, there are certain things in life which are less good for us, but they make a lot of money. I have a lot of friends in advertising. And
Hi, a friendly reminder to share this episode with your network, like and subscribe. And if you are feeling really supportive, please consider reviewing the show on the podcast platform of your choice. It all really helps support what we do. Thank you. Now back to the show.
Like the art of advertising, and I won't do it justice, but it's like, the point being is it's very easy to sell you something that's not good for you. It is harder to sell you something that is good for you. There's something about human nature there, and I think we are easily manipulated. Yeah, we're easily manipulated. If you're into the art of manipulation for your gain, then that's what you do. So it's
well, with great power comes great responsibility. This is what I tell people in sales. Like, once you get good at sales, it is actually pretty dangerous. You can use it for both good and bad. Like, salespeople have the dark side and the light side to choose from at a certain point.
Well, now it's what pill will you take? So
well, yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah, that's a outdated reference, I guess.
No, it's just is this good, is this bad? I mean, I reflect a lot on. I'm a huge advocate of a movement called Smartphone Free Childhood, and I think about that, for example.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I wanted us to talk about this and I almost forgot.
That's all right. Well, it's, I imagine, I don't know, did Mark Zuckerberg, what was his intention when he was building this platform? And, if you look back at the early stories, it's about knowing what's happening with your friends. Well, I think I remember there was some interesting, wasn't it about rating the attractiveness of the girls in the college? I can't remember anyway, and I don't want to misquote it, but I guess the point is that like social media and a platform like Facebook became very addictive, and then was designed to be addictive and generate extraordinary amounts of money because of its level of addiction. And therein you're back into the world of addictive foods that we've had all of our lives, addiction to wanting diamonds in our, like to your point, you can ultimately get the human brain to desire and put its attention wherever. And obviously companies are always trying to, that's what capitalism is about, right? Just keep making money, more money, make more money. So it's easy done, if it works. But to your point, where is there a set of values where you go, yeah, but like not kids?
Yeah,
but,
it's a complicated topic, is it? Because of there is a certain amount of accountability. Like, people have to take accountability for themselves too, right? You can't. I take issue with people squarely blaming the technology or the company. That feels to me like a dishonest kind of perspective on it, because it absolves the individual entirely from blame, and it's not that simple, right? It's like, we're talking about meditation, right? And especially in the first part about getting to know yourself and building the architecture in order to be able to interrogate yourself and to understand yourself and all of that. Like, that should be priority in your life. And if you're not, I mean, for most people, I would argue that it should be. And if you do that, then you'll probably be less likely to make poor choices when it concerns your health and so on. If you're not doing that, that is fine too. It's your life. But to decide not to do that, and as a consequence not be able to make maybe better choices for yourself, you can't then turn around and blame the person that's selling you something or providing you something, who is entirely doing it within, I would argue, pretty relatively sound moral frame. Not always, right, but relatively sound moral frameworks, certainly legal frameworks, at least, again, as they are, and so on. So it's like, I don't know. I think a lot of it also comes down to intention. Like you said, like, what is the intention behind it? You can definitely see with certain products and certain companies, the intention is clearly bad. But I don't think you find that as prevalently in tech businesses as you would in, say, food companies. Or
no.
Do you know what I mean?
I think I 100% agree with what you're saying, but I think there is something about age. And, like the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain that can make good, rational decisions, isn't fully developed until your early 20s. And so the truth is, like, as a human operating system, to use the language again, are we, I care mostly about the next generations. I'm a mom, and, that is, I don't know what we're doing if we're not, like, thinking about the health and happiness of the next generations. Like, I cannot compute, like, not worrying about that or concerning myself about it.
Absolutely, yeah, likewise.
So I think that when you are placing something addictive in a child's hands and building, for example, algorithms that will simply promote provocative content, etc., because that creates clicks and likes and time, you know what you're doing. Do you know what I mean? Like, know what you're doing. So at that point, I'm like, that young person actually doesn't have the grown-up wise capacity, and nor should they at the age that they are. They haven't done it. So I think that at that point I'm like, got to really think about going to sleep at night.
You're absolutely right, but then again, I mean, if we really sort of draw this conclusion out, this concept out, then we end up in some really dark places potentially, because of then what you have to say is, okay, so then in order to prevent that, let's say the algorithm thing, in order for the algorithm on certain platforms to not promote, potentially harmful content, sexual content, violent content, whatever, then some measures need to be taken in order to curb that, right? Okay. That means you have to impose certain policies and rules and algorithms on a platform in order to not actually allow for either entire freedom of speech or to curb that freedom of speech and things like that. And so then you start getting into some really dark potential territories of like, okay, who's going to enforce that? Is it going to be backed by, what are the consequences of breaking that, etc. I mean, that's one side of it. That's not even to mention the other side of it, which is accountability of the individual in terms of like, why are we, like, should we be giving kids access to that at all? Who's authorizing that, and the complexities that arise there? Because then again, as a parent, I'm thinking, well, if I don't let my child have access to these things, he's just going to get bullied at school for not knowing it. And so, do you see what I'm saying?
I do. I mean, I've been in it for a long time. I don't see it in principle as, I think we already have a pretty solid kind of, okay, if you think about film ratings, like if you Google it, film ratings are in place across the world, like period. Like there is very few countries that exist on the entirety of the earth that have not had for like a good 100 years or so film ratings. Why? Because the reasonable person, and I'm talking like the whole earth, not just like this isn't like niche, this is not niche, this is the whole earth, for decades has said, do you know what, I'm not really sure a 12-year-old, I'll give you an exact one, I'm not really sure a 15-year-old should watch a man being beheaded. Not a film. And by the way, bear in mind that with the cinema and with film, it wasn't an actual man being beheaded, because that would be banned. Like that wouldn't even hit the cinema.
It'd be a simulation. Like, it would be a simulation. Fine. But you're saying a real video.
Yeah. Like I can't remember the stat, but I think it's like 75% of 15-year-olds or something have seen that. So I don't know what's happened to us where somehow we're now going, it's like, no. Like we already had a pretty decent, no, I understand that that is set by various countries and what have you, but broadly the consensus of humankind was, let's not let young children see things if they don't have to. Like, don't get me wrong, if you are in a war zone, you are experiencing that, and which is a whole other thing. But if you are not there, like, do you want that going into your eyeballs every single day? What is that doing to your human body? Because you're going to have a response to that. What is that doing to your operating system in seeing that every single day? And by the way, because the algorithms will promote you provocative content, if you even hover over something, because you do, and here's the principle, if an AI like watched humans from above, it would go, oh, they fucking love car crashes. They are like looking at car crashes. They love them. They love them. Give them more car crashes. Give them more car crashes.
Yeah.
But not actually, we look at those car crashes because we're humans and we're animals.
And if you give us more, we're going to watch them.
Absolutely. And we'll just keep watching them because this is what we do. What are we doing, though, to a young brain? So my point of view about the whole thing is this. Scrap film ratings. Put on Saw at your local cinema and be like, anyone welcome, 5-year-olds come in. And if I say that to you, you're like, that's ridiculous. But then why have we got to the point where we somehow are justifying and trying to like, it's like, what shifted? You tell me what shifted, where for hundreds of years we have said, 5-year-olds probably shouldn't go in to see Saw.
I don't think anything has shifted. It's just that the medium is different and you can't regulate it the same way. I mean, like if I ask you to put your COO hat on and ask you to actually sit down and figure out a way to solve this problem, it's a way more complicated problem to solve than age ratings for movies or computer games or whatever, right? Because in that scenario, all you do, you ID people, right? Now, okay, what is the internet equivalent of that? Infinitely more complicated, and it starts to encroach into territory which could impede on people's rights. We have to be careful.
But
do you see my point there? Like because otherwise it requires people to have some form of digital identification. Because let me put it this way: if Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all the main social media platforms all decided to implement exactly what you're saying today, right, tomorrow, right? Fine. Kids are still going to find it elsewhere. They're going to go to different platforms, right? Because most of this stuff exists on other platforms specifically for it. I know, I used to work many years ago in the nightlife industry, and the doormen that I used to work with used to love going to these websites and watching this stuff because they're like ex-military and stuff. So they would watch these decapitation videos and stuff like that. Horrendous. But it's all on different platforms. It's shared to the social media, but it lives on other platforms. They'll find it. Right?
Absolutely.
And all of these platforms have people who have accounts that are anonymous, right? Of course, because they say horrible things, they post horrible things. So anonymity is the issue. But if you take away anonymity, you are massively encroaching people's rights, right? Because otherwise that is totalitarian. That is ultimate surveillance. So do you see what I mean? I'm so torn because I agree with everything you said. But when it comes to the solution, the choice is either have freedom and everything about that's messy, and then it's on to individuals to try and make the right choices as best as we can, or you have totalitarianism in full control. Do you see what I mean? It doesn't really feel like there's a middle ground.
I do. I don't doubt. Take the cinema piece though, take cigarettes, take alcohol. Did I still watch films before I should have? For sure. Like, did I smoke? For sure. But
there's always a way.
There is always a way, but there is setting a principle. Like like you say, there's a sort of value system that we are saying, by and large, like, this is very addictive. I wouldn't recommend it until you're 16 or what have you. I totally get it. And I don't think it is easy. I think it is massively complicated. Do I trust in the creative technology genius of a lot of the technology, the creative technology geniuses? Yeah, 100%. Like, I feel that things absolutely could be, but it's this broad acceptance now that, it's all just out the bag, and what can we do? And where we have got to with like devices in pockets of children is they are fully accessible. We don't, like, we have to ask ourselves this question. Do we just say, oh, well, kids just get behind the wheel of a car then? Well, kids just go into the cinema whenever. You just fucking get alcohol. Just walk into that, like, that. It's all, you're encroaching on my human rights by saying I'm 15 years old and I can't go and buy booze. I want booze. Like, I will find a way. But broadly what we are saying,
you're making it more difficult.
So,
yeah.
Exactly. Or it's just, it's a broad sort of system. Then
I know what you're saying, but I just think that, it I don't know. I do agree with you, but there's a line there, isn't there? Because, like, when you talk about principles and like invoking values or whatever, like, I don't see it as Mark Zuckerberg's responsibility to ensure that he lays down good values for my child. Like, that's my responsibility. Because at the end of the day, what I would much prefer, my responsibility is so that when my son or sons encounter the choice between doing something right or wrong, or looking at something right or wrong, they make the right choice, because they're inevitably going to come across it. Do you know what I mean?
I do, but I don't think most kids have a choice. So hear me out. Like,
okay, interesting.
It is one thing to have like the video and say, do you want to watch this video? And you go, yeah, go on then, I'll watch it. It is another thing to be mindlessly scrolling and for something to pop up on your feed. I'll give you an example. Let me give you an example. My mum is 70 odd, right? On her feed, I kid you not, she's like, I'm getting videos of monkeys where the baby monkey is like sucking the daddy monkey, and she's like, what? Like, she's like, why has this ever come up in my feed? But obviously, because it's shocking, she hovers on it for a hot second. The algorithm's like, she bloody loves those monkey videos. Keep sending her monkey videos. She's getting videos of like men coming out of the sea and they're tight. She, bless her heart, she's like, I don't know where all this is coming from. So I'm not sure these algorithms are doing a particularly great job of not just chucking like really random crap in people's eyeballs. And it's, you've seen it time and time again. A young boy, you go on a young boy's profile on TikTok, within a couple of minutes, you're going to see something. You're going to see an abuse video. You go on a girl's video, within a couple of minutes, you're going to see a self-harm video or something. So, like, there is no choice. There is no choice.
Yeah, you make a very valid point. I mean, because of, essentially the way I've interpreted what you said there is we have the ability to influence our children to develop their value system, but so do these products.
Absolutely, 100%.
So yeah, you're absolutely right, because they're being reactive to an undeveloped mind.
And and I think you've got to remember the business model. Right, the business model is attention, and what gets attention is provocation. Why do newspapers have shocking headlines?
Yeah, it's because of our proclivity to negativity. We're predisposed to it evolutionarily. Yeah,
exactly, and that is very. So I do think, I get it's hard. It's extraordinarily hard, and actually, what I think is that this is why I think the movement is so powerful. And I'm working. Funny enough, after this call, I'm going to a high school to start talking to them about what they're going to do with their phone policy. I don't have any doubt that it's hard, but I still feel like, I'll give you another example. There's a woman who's part of this movement, and her 12-year-old daughter went to choir practice, and this kid just flipped the phone round and she watched a decapitation video. She didn't have a choice. It was like, bang, there you go. Something gets shared in a WhatsApp group. You're watching it before you've even realized you're watching it. It's like YouTube channels where like a kid will be watching something really like, so there's got to be like,
what would you say? No, I think you've touched on a really important point there. What would you say to the idea of, say, there being an AI on children's devices that surveilled them, that actually watched what they were doing? Do you think that would cross a line of privacy when it comes to children up to a certain age? Let's say up to the age of, say, 10, right? Just to be really conservative on the age thing.
Yes.
Up to the age of 10, would we say that's acceptable, or are we starting to encroach on privacy if we're asking AI to literally watch everything that's going on that screen and report back to us.
As I say, I am not an expert, and I am not, but I would be looking more at the access to the apps. Like, what do you have to do to actually get access to this app?
Well, yeah, I mean, we already have certain settings that we can do. So, for example, my son, he's 10, and he has a phone that he doesn't carry with him. He's got access to it on occasion, right? So mostly for like listening to music when he's doing stuff or having a bath, he wants to put stuff on, or Headspace, right, for example. But then there's occasions where obviously he might go to his room with that phone. Yeah. And it's all restricted. So it's got I've set it up through like Microsoft Family or whatever, where you can do that. So you can restrict certain things, but there's always ways of getting around it. And if there's a way, I mean, my son, if there's a way of getting around something, he will figure it out, right?
100%.
And so and also some things might not appear to be harmful to the filters or whatever, but they are, right? So I don't know. It's just, and it's also about habits in general, because it might not even be necessarily viewing something that's particularly violent or dangerous, but it might just be like, dude, you should have just been listening to music and you chose to like look through pictures of lions for 3 hours. Like you should, you know what I mean? Like you should have been doing that puzzle. Like it could even be something as, completely mundane as that, but I don't know.
I think it is, it's all sides of the coin, isn't it? Which is why I think the movement is about delay. The movement is delay. And actually I think the movement is also about awareness and education. And I think that to your point, it's like, you may be unaware that, if your child goes down a rabbit hole on a laptop, because I don't even think the phone is just the issue. It's access to the internet. It's access to everything in any sort of, you could just get access to absolutely everything. So I do think a lot of it is around educating parents about what is accessible. But it's this balance because, I hear a lot of people saying, oh, well, my kid needs to be great at tech. My kid needs to be great at tech. We're like living in a world of technology. And I couldn't agree more. I already, my daughter is 8 and I already have shown her what AI is, how to use it, how can she make the most out of it. But what she's not doing is like back-to-back TikTok videos. And what I often say when I'm talking about it is like, I have never, like, using social media or flicking through YouTube doesn't make you great at tech.
Yeah.
Like, my mom is like rocking out on Instagram. There's no profound teaching here or like understanding of how to like build a tech company, be part of like the framework of the architecture around how you even bring like an AI platform to fruition. Like that's got nothing to do with TikTok videos. It's got nothing to do with liking and sharing. So I think that
they're talking about tech literacy in a more broad consumer sense, as opposed to like getting interested in a STEM field or becoming a developer, right? Like, which is very different. This idea,
it's tough though. As I say, I'm going to a high school tonight, and it's tricky. They're like 90% of our problems now in school are down to phones and social media and what kids do. However, we do like using them in classes for this and that, and so I'm actually going into to do it. So I don't know what the answer is. Really, genuinely,
like we spoke about before, I've spent long and hard thinking about this, and I think I've arrived at a conclusion. At least for now, it might change, but I've held it for a while now. Which is this AI idea, which is that
it's fascinating.
I think that we have an opportunity here to create AI assistants essentially for children, and that phones that are designed specifically, there should be phones essentially that are designed with a UI and operating system specifically for kids that unlock other features and access based on the way that they're using it. So it should be built along a very stringent path, very linear path, and it won't necessarily block like what they can go online for and things like, obviously bar the obvious age filters, right?
Yeah.
If you are enjoying this episode and want to support the show, please like, subscribe with notifications turned on, and let us know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. This lets YouTube know we are doing something right. Back to the show.
But if they do find a way around it, it's not going to stop them, but it will talk to them.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Right? And I think that's the important thing, because of what we talk about a lot with, I've been talked to about, and I talk to other parents about, especially as a huge tech advocate, like you said, is the education piece.
Yeah.
But it's impossible to implement. Like, let's be completely honest. It is impossible. You can have the best intentions in the world. You could have a roadmap for introducing your child to the internet, technology, whatever, for like the first 20 years of their life. There is no practical way of implementing it without hiring help. And absolutely. I think AI is sat right there. And we could get our AI to be like, just keep an eye on my kid while they're online, please.
Well, and I think this is I think what is exciting is that, in the same way that obviously we are seeing, awful crashes in children's mental health and well-being and suicide, like really like, it's not great. I like really feel for kids, especially kids like through the COVID era. I think everyone just like went on their phone. So I think in particular, like there's also a lot of kids that are moving away from technology. There's a lot of young people who are actually going. So, to your point, I think it will all come out in the wash in a way, in various different ways, shapes and forms. But there are devices coming out which are designed perfect for children. I am in conversations with this incredible woman who is looking, to create a sort of rating for apps. Parents, but who rates those apps? But the point being is, if you pull together a body of people who you respect and have a good, decent understanding of mental health, gamification, addiction, because to your point, I'd let my kids use the Headspace app all day, every day if they liked. I'm all good with you getting addicted to meditating, that's fine by me. So I think it's about, I talk a lot about the supermarket. My mum was a northern 80s mum, and she did what the adverts told her. She bought microwave meals. We had vegetables out of a tin because it was efficient. That was how I lived my life. Like, I consumed an extraordinary amount of sugar. My mum has type 2 diabetes and was told she was malnourished a few months ago, and she's very overweight, and she would say that herself. She's now gone on Manjaro to work with that. But I guess the point being is that my mum didn't really understand healthy, not healthy. And I think this is the challenge, is that you have parents just living their lives, and everyone's on their phone, and we've just all consumed this new way of living and this behavior, and we're just going with it. Do you know what I mean? Well, we'll just go with it because then it kind of seems fun and exciting. But, are we even aware of what we're doing, which is, I think, exactly like food in the 80s. So I think it's similar to, there's sort of a big kind of piece of education now around going into a supermarket. You're choosing what to consume through your mouth and into your body. And I think with tech and screens, it's important to get to a point where you can make a considered choice about what you're consuming through your eyes and into your brain. And I don't think adults know what they're consuming. And when I say what are they consuming, I'm not even talking like a piece of video or an audio that they might experience. It's the art of the gamification. It's like, what's happening to me here? I'm just getting sucked in. So it's even knowing when my daughter uses Duolingo, and I will say to her, are you feeling addicted right now? How hard is it? It's time to close the iPad. How hard is it for you to close the iPad right now? Can you feel how hard that is? Can you feel how excited you get when they go ka-ching, when they make that noise? Like, I'm teaching her the art of gamification. So she's like, oh, I know what's happening.
So you can become self-aware. Yeah.
But like, that's me, I am not an average parent in that sense, because I've come from that world and I understand it. So to your point, yes, the onus is on us, but was the onus on my mom in the 80s when the adverts were telling her, shiny thing over here? I think
there's an argument for both sides, because one argument is absolutely, yes, it is on you to take personal accountability of your diet and what you consume, both mentally and physically. It is. We need to take responsibility to that. But at the same time, it's also a responsibility of businesses to ensure that they hold themselves to some level of standards and consider themselves to have a social responsibility. I think the problem lies in the complexity of the potential solution. That's the issue. And I love your comparison to food, by the way, because I'm a huge foodie. I'm the chef at home. I'm an ex-chef from many years ago.
Oh, nice.
So food is my thing, and I think very, very carefully about the food that we eat at home. I consider that to be an immense responsibility. To the point where, talking to my wife, who doesn't have that relationship with food and didn't grow up with that relationship, she grew up very, very similar to you, right? In a relationship with food, she doesn't get that relationship. For me, food is probably the most important thing in our household, right? Because it's our fuel. It defines it. It literally makes up our bodies and our brains. And so if we don't have that, we don't have anything to work with. So that's how I see it.
That's brilliant. You're like my husband. So my husband is that he grew up with a granddad that had an allotment. They always had fresh vegetables, and so he does that. And it's interesting because now you're talking about it. Maybe sort of my sort of obsession is more about what we're consuming in our minds, and that probably is triggered by family history of mental health challenges and my own personal mental health challenges. And I think because I've because of meditating and the clear scientific benefits of the art of being present and in the present moment. And the more that you can do that, as I say, the science speaks for itself. I guess my beef with sort of social media and short form content and kind of kids consuming that, it is the absolute antithesis to that. Whatever you're watching, like the truth be told, is like you're really, really not present. So I suppose in a way, and I don't have the answers, and I wish I did, and sort of feel naive in many ways talking about it, but I am passionate about it in the same way that you are with food, because I really believe that what we consume through our eyes and our minds can have a profound effect on our human existence. And to your point, if you're 18 plus doing that, like you do, you choose. But when you're responsible for young people...
yes and no, because again, to your point about your mum, it's like, even as an adult, you're culpable and you're responsible. But at the same time, if you've built 20 odd years of bad habits through no fault of your own, through influence by your parents making, not so great decisions, who by themselves were also influenced by, like, everyone's culpable.
Yeah.
So it's like, in some ways, it's not really useful figuring out who's culpable. What's useful is finding out the solution, like, because otherwise you're just playing a blame game. There's plenty of blame to go around for everything these days. No one has clean hands, but I just do love the analogy you make with food, because of it's so true. It's junk food for the brain, it's junk content. And even what used to be traditionally non-junk content, like movies and the cinema and things that used to make you think, is increasingly becoming junk content too. I've noticed it doesn't seem to want you to think, it wants to do the thinking for you.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It almost borderline propaganda, but that's almost a different topic. We could probably get into the conspiratorial side of the social media thing on another day. But I suppose one final thought on this topic before we kind of maybe move on to wrap things up, so we're coming to the end, is, I guess, I see this as funny enough to tie this into kind of what we both do an element of, which is your favorite word, coaching, right? I think it has to come back to that. But I just wonder if there's a smarter way of doing it, the coaching side of things, because you need a personal trainer to get fit, a nutritionist to tell you how to eat better. And if you don't have any foundational understanding of health and fitness and nutrition, you would ideally need to have these people live with you. Right?
Yeah.
And it's the same, if not an infinitely more complex problem when it comes to the tech problem, I think. And you're asking people who have got 1,000,001 other things to worry about to suddenly care very, very deeply about implementing extraordinarily complex solutions to incredibly complex problems that they don't even know exist a lot of the time.
No, I think this is it. It's it is very, very complex. And I think that, my very broad brush advice for parents in particular is to delay as much as possible, unless you are like picking and choosing something which is, like Duolingo. You're going to learn a language. Is it hardcore gamification? 100%. Like, at what age? And you have to ride that out. Like, my son is 5. He literally can't cope with an iPad, because if he gets it, he's like, I need it. I can't let it go. Like, it's just but it's complicated, right? Because if she's on something so there's loads of like madness going on in our house where she's sneaking off to use it for like a little bit. Well, it's very, very, very complicated. I think I think education is the thing. It's probably a little bit like you say, when the microwave was invented, it's like, whoa, now we can just, like you kind of fathom it out, don't you? But I just think, the more education, the better. I think schools need to be educated. I really feel like, so I'm going to a school now to kind of give them the insight.
I don't think schools should allow phones. Full stop.
I mean, I agree.
I don't get why they would allow them. What could possibly be the benefit?
I agree entirely, but their point, which I think is very fair, I'm speaking on behalf of all schools, what I have heard in conversation with some teachers is also they didn't buy the phones for the kids, it's the parents. So this is to your point, everyone's is it the tech product, is it the parent, is it the school, is it what have you? But
but you have uniform. You have things that you can and cannot take into school. That's not unusual.
No.
I mean, I couldn't take a samurai sword into school.
No,
do you know what I mean?
You couldn't. No.
I couldn't even take like a toy car into school. Like, I'm not allowed to take things into school other than the tools I need in order to do my job and wear what I'm allowed to wear as deemed appropriate.
Yeah.
Like, I don't see an issue with it. Like, it could just be, there could be an area where kids lock away their devices. If they're that terrified of not having them handy, lock away their devices. These lockers only open at lunch breaks.
Absolutely.
And then that's it. And if they need to be checked before they go in to make sure they've definitely handed their phones in, do it. But I would much rather that than them potentially Like, okay, is it? I think the biggest issue is the distraction thing in that scenario.
Yeah,
They're there
and
to learn at the end of the day. Am I allowed
absolutely.
to take, my phone out at work if I'm working in a restaurant? No.
No.
Like, you know what I
This
mean?
is
So
it.
it's also, you're not setting them up very well for the workplace.
No, you're not. No, the challenge that I think a lot of the teachers are having is, especially when they get to a sort of early teens, is that on buses and bus passes, most bus passes are like, in a way, everyone embraced technology so much that like your bank is on it. And that's the challenge with children, because you want them, like, I want my children to have access to online banks and start to learn that, and bus passes and whatnot. And I want them to have music. So this is why there's multiple companies that are now launching devices for children, which is the most glorious thing, because then they can enter the world of the joy of technology without any of the sort of internet enabled places that we just don't. So, which are distracting, because your phone with your banking app and the weather and maps, not that distracting. I'm not picking that bad boy. You know, like there are children going into the toilet at lunch break and locking the doors. So if you give them something which is good technology but not fundamentally distracting or addictive, there's nothing addictive about the weather app. I mean, I'm yet to get addicted to it.
You haven't given it a chance.
No,
I'm on that thing 24/7. I tell you.
But anyway, no, but it's complicated. It's complicated.
It is. But you're right. The creation of some of these sort of dumb phones, or like partially smartphones, like, it's a cool concept.
Just phones, Gregory. Like, it makes me like, I sat next to my husband once. I was like, we need to come up with a better word for a dumb phone, and he literally looked at me and went, phone.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, a phone.
Yeah. Or or what would a phone be if it had nothing else on it but the ability to take a photo? What would that be? Do we have a word for that?
Phone cam. I don't know. It's mad.
But even then, I still think that's maybe reinventing the wheel unnecessarily. Like, you can't. I mean, if anyone's listening or watching this, thinking about this about their own kids, like, for example, there are actually a lot of settings already on phones that you can use for this stuff that people just don't know exists. You can create family accounts that most people don't know, because if you've just had a kid, the last thing you're thinking about is that. But at some point, you can look into it. Microsoft do it, Apple do it, and you can create these these linked accounts and stuff. The problem is, this isn't widely talked about by these companies or available online. But if you just go and look on YouTube, like, how do I set up a family account on Microsoft or on Google or on whatever, there's actually some pretty good settings in it.
It's effort, though, isn't it? And to your point, when it comes to food, it's effort and time that I'm like, actually, but I think this is the opportunity for startups founders, is if you come out and you present parents who are thinking, I don't really want to, whatever, with an easy solution, off the shelf solution, I'm going to buy that. You got to make it a good price. You got to think about the masses, but like, there's opportunity there.
Absolutely. But I mean, at the same time, it's like, back to my point about accountability. It's like, these things exist. So it's like, if you use all of these things and you're still struggling to keep your children on the right path, fine, complain, but don't not use any of these things or even bother looking into them. Yeah. Especially once you know that they exist. If you didn't know they exist, fine. But especially once you know they exist, and then try and say you're trying to make my kid dumb. It's like, well, come on, take some accountability. Did you even try? Did you set these things up?
I will share this. So there's a brilliant woman that I've worked with, Dr. Susie, from an organisation called Papaya. And to be fair, and in the organisation, a lot of things can be broken and bypassed. The last I heard, one platform which was very good was Custadio. It's a QUSGADIO. And this is me passing on sort of information that I've heard more than I know it myself. But apparently that is one that is very robust. So yeah, dropping that out there if that's helpful for anybody. And probably old news now. There's probably something better. But
there's lots. I know there's a lot of people working on that stuff. I've met the founders of both the hardware side and the software side. There's a lot going on there, and it's encouraging. But it's a bigger problem. It takes a village, right? That's the thing. It's not just one thing. I mean, I had a conversation with my son, for example, yesterday about being selective with friends, about setting boundaries. Because we have issues with his behavior, and I have to say to him, like, look, you need to choose who you hang around with a bit better, buddy, because the people you're deciding to hang around with, like, by the time you get into secondary school, it's going to be a whole different kettle of fish. And I was like, and you need to be that better kid that people want to hang around with too. Right?
And do you know what? I think you've just touched on something quite profound, and maybe this is really the big lesson, is I am not on social media anymore, because I realised that I have very strict, I'm looking at my phone over there, like, I've really readjusted my own relationship with it so I can be present for my kids. Right. And I think that's the truth, is that, my daughter, unrequested on holiday last week, said, we're going to have a screen-free day today. Bearing in mind, they were literally having 30 minutes of like Crossy Road while I was having a shower. It wasn't like it was a lot going on anyway. But even like, I've obviously talked about things in such a way that she was like, yeah, not today. I'm pretty strict about it. We don't have phones in our rooms. Our phones go in one place in the kitchen. And my husband and I just realized that we ourselves were just like,
got to set an example, right? This is the thing. And I don't, yeah, set an example and lay down. This is what I mean. I think the kids ultimately, they learn their base values from us.
Absolutely.
And I don't think we're doing a particularly good job of actually setting a good example. And so, on one side, we're talking about don't do this, don't do that, don't do that. And then we're just doing all the stuff we're saying not to do. So we need to stop being hypocrites, at the end of the day.
And maybe that, we sort of said, where is that? Maybe that's the start of it. Like, is that actually, if we as adults be like, nah, this is madness, then the generations follow, so
that has to be the starting point. And I don't think we've done that bit yet. And that's kind of, I guess, why I push back a little bit against some of the rhetoric around this topic, because I think we're not doing the fundamentals right first.
Yeah, it's absolutely fair.
We're just very quick to point the finger at the big companies. It's like, well, at the end of the day, you're using them, which is why they're in business.
Absolutely.
So, you know what I mean? Like the reason, why can you go and buy a McDonald's? You complain about there being McDonald's. They exist for a reason.
Yeah.
Because they make money. Vote with your wallet.
Absolutely.
And vote with your attention.
Vote with your attention. There you go. Yeah. Meditate. Put your attention over there. You'll be well. I did not mean for that to be an ad at the very end.
That was a nice full circle moment.
Couldn't help it.
Yeah, well, look, we've come to the end. I could easily talk to you for another 2 hours, but I'm going to let you go because I'm sure you're sick of me and you've got better things to do.
Well, I've got to go to that school and see if I can...
Yeah. Well, you can tell them what I said. You can say it's from me so you don't get in trouble.
Thank you.
But no, it's been wonderful having you on. Thank you so much. And we'll have to definitely catch up again soon. I want to hear how things are going. And so, just really briefly for everyone that's listening or watching, you do coaching, is that right?
Yeah.
As you mentioned.
I do.
Working specifically with founders and executives.
Absolutely, yeah. That's exactly what I do. ShonaBeats.com. Come and see what I do. And if you're interested, then of course we can hook up and see if I can help you grow and be profoundly impactful in the world.
Wonderful. I'll put that website as well as your LinkedIn profile in the description. So anyone who wants to connect with you and chat with you, they can do so. So all that's left to say is thank you so much.
You are welcome.
Have a wonderful evening. Hope it goes well at the school. And hopefully we'll catch up again very soon.
Thanks, Gregory.
Cheers.
See you soon.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you for listening and or watching. Please like and subscribe. Or if you are listening via podcasting service and want to show your support, consider rating or leaving a review. It really helps. See you next week.